Hi everyone, this is Chapter 7 of Calling on Dragons. It's also for D.I.J. Castillo. This is called In Which Killer Rises in the World. What does that mean? Mendenbar returned just as Telemaine began his explanation of the wizard melting spell. You'll want to know this too, Mendenbar, Telemaine said, and went right on with his lecture. The enchantment was typical of the magician's spare spells. It required a lot of preparation and a complicated ritual to set it up. But once that had been done, you could use it several times simply by pointing and saying a trigger word. According to Telemaine, you didn't even need to say the trigger word aloud. Theoretically, a mental recitation would be just as effective, Telemaine said. This theory, however, remains unverified, so there's no opportunity for experimentation as Telemaine! If you don't stop babbling, gobbledygook, I'm going to bring Kazul back to listen, Morwen said. Mendenbar and I know what you're saying, but Cimmerian hasn't the slightest idea what you're talking about. Yes, and I appreciate if somebody would translate that last bit, Cimmerian said. It sounded important. Just thinking the trigger word ought to be as good as saying it, Mendenbar explained. But he doesn't know for sure because he hasn't had a chance to test it on a wizard yet. Well, you'll probably get one soon, Cimmerian said. Have we got all the ingredients you need for the ritual? Because I think everyone ought to be prepared to melt wizards before anyone goes sword hunting. It's all very well for Kazul to say she'll eat them, but if they have any dragon's bane... Good idea, Mendenbar said. What will we need? I brought the rarer components with me, Telemaine said. If you have 7 lemons, a book that's missing half its cover, and 3 pints of unicorn water, I could start working on it at once. What is unicorn water? Mendenbar pursed his lips. I don't think we have any unicorn water. Yes, we do, Cimmerian said. It's in the cupboard by the buckets in a jug marked Magic Mirror Cleaner. Don't look at me like that. It was the safest place I could think of. Ever since we put the gargoyle in charge of answering the mirror, nobody but me dares to clean it. Mendenbar laughed. I don't blame them. Why don't you and Telemaine check the library and start setting up on the Grand Hall? As Cimmerian suggested, Morwen and I will get the other ingredients and meet you there. The 2 men agreed to this plan, and the group split up. As the castle door closed, Cimmerian gave a sigh of relief. How do you stand it? She asked Morwen. The way Telemaine complicates things when he talks? Morwen shook her head. I don't have to. Much. I thought you were old friends. We are. That doesn't mean we see a lot of each other, though I'll admit that he drops by much more often now that he lives in the Enchanted Forest. Even so, Morwen thought for a minute. The only thing you can do is avoid talking about magic with him, she said at last. He's reasonably clear when it comes to normal conversation, but as soon as anyone mentions spells, he gets technical. Or you can make sure Kazul is always with you. Yes, I noticed that Telemaine doesn't. A distant bray interrupted Cimmerian in mid-sentence. Good heavens, she asked. What on earth is that? Killer, Morwen said, walking more quickly. Unless you've acquired a donkey since the last time I was here. A donkey? No, but... As he rounded the last corner and came inside of the kitchen, Cimmerian stopped short. The cook stood in the half-open kitchen door, brandishing a copper frying pan to keep Killer from forcing his way inside, while Scorn and Jasper watched from the safety of a nearby window ledge. Midway between the kitchen and the moat, Kazul sat on her haunches, smiling down at the terrified blue donkey in amusement. Since the smile showed a fair number of teeth, it wasn't helping Killer's state of mind at all. Killer, Morwen said sternly, stop that this instant. But it's a dragon, Killer wailed, and it's right there. Ah! The cook glanced toward them, gasped, and dropped the frying pan. Your Majesty! Taking full advantage of the cook's distraction, Killer flung himself forward. He hit the door with a thud, shoving it wide and knocking the cook over backwards. As his head and front feet disappeared inside the kitchen, a cat yowled, loudly in surprise and pain. Fiddlesticks, Morwen said. That does it. She raised her arms. Sky and sea and whirling sands, stop that creature where he stands. On the final word, she brought both hands down in a swift chopping gesture. Killer stopped moving and gave a startled bellow. An instant later, Fiddlesticks shot out from between the donkey's legs. Morwen breathed a quiet sigh of relief. He stepped on my tail, Fiddlesticks said with great indignation. He sat down at Kazul's feet and began energetically washing the offended part. I'm surprised it wasn't your nose, Scorn said. You poke it in enough peculiar places. Help! Help! Killer cried. I'm going to be eaten. Get this creature out of my kitchen, the cook yelled as he scrambled to his feet. Quiet, all of you, said Cimmerian, edging her way through the narrow gap between Killer's rear end and the door frame. Since Fiddlesticks seemed more or less unharmed, Morwen followed Cimmerian inside. Killer continued to moan and whimper despite Cimmerian's order, but at least he stopped braying. Inside, Cimmerian glanced around the kitchen, which was nearly as clean and tidy as Morwen's, and nodded to the cook. The cook bowed deeply. Cimmerian turned to Killer. Nobody's going to eat anyone here unless I say so. Now, how did this happen? Just how you'd expect, Scorn said from the window. Killer was being stupid again. I'm not stupid, Killer said. Oh, help! I said quiet, Cimmerian said. But I can't move and there's a dragon. I can arrange it so you can't talk either, Morwen said. And if you don't start behaving yourself, I'll do it. Cimrine, this is Killer. He ought to be a rabbit of the usual size and color, but he's had some trouble with wizards lately. This is Cimrine, the queen of the enchanted forest. I think you should answer her question. Killer rolled his eyes and waggled his ears, managing to look foolish and terrified at the same time. But after a few more minutes of reassurance, coaxing and stern commands, he calmed down enough to explain. He had been waiting for the castle cook to mix up his promised lunch and hadn't noticed Kazul's arrival. When the cats pointed her out to him, he had been nervous, but he hadn't really started to worry until Kazul asked the cook to pack provisions for a journey. What had really panicked him, though, had been the dragon saying, in an answer to a question from the cook, that the provisions should be for human people only because she would find her own meals. Oh, no. There. You see, Scorn said, lashing her tail. He was being stupid. I can see why it may make you nervous, Cimrine said to Killer. Kazul can be a bit intimidating up close. She considered for a moment. Kazul won't eat you once you've been properly introduced. Let him loose, Morwen, and I'll take him over and present him. Are you sure? Killer said. Positive, Cimrine told him. Dragons are very polite. Morwen, since all the cats were out of danger and Killer seemed to have settled down, Morwen nodded agreement. Bringing her hands together at the waist height, she said, Fire and cloud and rain and snow, lift the spell and let him go. As she spoke, she raised her arms in a slow reversal of the movement she had used to free Killer where he stood. For a long moment, nothing seemed to happen. Morwen frowned, wondering if the wizard's size-changing spell was interfering with her witchcraft. Then a ripple ran across Killer's back like heat rising from an iron stove. He shivered, shook himself, and pranced backward several steps, ducking his head to clear the top of the doorway. Thanks, he said. Can we just sort of skip the part about presenting me to the dragon for now? That wouldn't be a good Killer. Are you growing again? Morwen asked. You look taller. Jasper yawned widely and jumped down from the window ledge. He's not taller, the cat said, strolling forward. He's just farther up. Is this what it rises in the world? Do you mean literally rises? Automatically, Morwen, Cimrine, and the cook glanced down, following Jasper's movements. Morwen blinked. Between Killer's front hooves and the flagstones of the courtyard stretched a long inch of empty air. Oh, he's literally... I didn't understand that. I wonder if he'll still leave footprints, Cimrine said, half to herself. What is it? Killer said nervously. What are you all staring at? He looked down and his ears stiffened. He pranced backward out of sight, and Cimrine and Morwen hurried after him. With every step he gained a little more height until he was a good 4 inches above the ground. Help! I'm falling! You're not falling, Scorn said. You're floating. He is. Isn't he? Fiddlestick said, walking over. And it's a very good idea. He can't step on anybody's tail now. Hold still, Morwen said to the donkey. Every time you take a step, you get farther up. If you keep moving up, you'll be over the castle in no time. And if the spell suddenly wears off... Oh, boy. Killer rolled his eyes and planted his feet firmly in thin air. Now what? Now you wait, Morwen told him. This looks like another side effect of mixing different kinds of magic, and that's really Telemain's specialty. I'll send him out as soon as we're done inside. Tell him to hurry. By the way, he still hasn't eaten yet. Cimrine shook her head. I'm afraid it will take a while, but we'll bring him as soon as you can. In the meantime, Evan will get you some lunch. She looked back over her shoulder at the cook, who nodded and vanished into the kitchen. Behind Killer, scales scraped noisily against stone. This is very entertaining, Kazul said. But haven't we got more important things to do than argue with an oversized blue donkey with avian ambitions? Killer rolled his eyes and choked back another bray. Cimrine smiled but shook her head. It's not quite as silly as it looks. Kazul, this is Killer. Killer, this is Kazul, the king of the dragons. Killer is the one who found out that the wizards are back in the forest. Kazul. He is? Kazul came back around in front where she could see Killer more clearly. Have you got any idea how they got into the palace? No, ma'am, said Killer. The size-changing spell must have had something to do with it, Morwen said. If they shrank themselves small enough to sneak through the door without being seen... That would be hard, Cimrine said. Our regular doorman is on vacation, so Willen's been handling it. He's not all that big himself. The wizards would have to shrink awfully small to get past him. There are other doors, Kazul pointed out. This one, for instance. She waved a claw at the kitchen entrance. Yes, but there's a spell on them that rings a bell in the footman's room whenever someone doesn't belong here. Comes through one of them. However they did it, we aren't going to figure it out standing here, Morwen said. Either we should go down to the armory and investigate it, or we should get those lemons and go meet Mendenbar and Telemain the way we planned. Good heavens, I almost forgot, Cimrine said. Excuse me, lemons and unicorn water. It is. I'm sorry, Kazul, but we can't do everything at once. Cimrine and Morwen said goodbye to Kazul and went back into the kitchen, where they collected They'd lemons and unicorn water. Just as they were leaving, Jasper slipped out from behind a large basket of apples that was leaning against a corner wall. "Morwen," said the cat, "I've got something to tell you." "All right," Morwen said. "Would you mind waiting a minute, Simrine? Jasper wants to talk to me, and he wouldn't interrupt if it weren't important." "Of course," Simrine said, "but do try to be quick, Jasper. We've already taken more time than we should have." Jasper favored Simrine with a slow blink of approval. "I like her. She understands cats better than most people do." "Very likely," said Morwen. "Now, what is it you wanted to tell me? I know how the wizards got into the armory." "Oh, okay. Well," the cat coughed and looked around to make sure none of the other animals were within hearing distance. "Plumbing and mouse holes," he said very softly. "There's an old drain that goes under the moat and comes out in the forest. The wizards used it to get into the castle and then wandered around on the walls until they found a mouse hole into the armory. Once they had the sword, they used a transport spell to leave." "How do you know all this?" Jasper hunched his shoulders in embarrassment. "I asked the castle mice. A couple of them are friends of mine, and they gave me the whole story." "Don't tell anyone, will you? If Scorn finds out, I'll never hear the end of it." "No, what?" I was like, why would you not want the other animals to hear? "If Scorn or anyone else says one word about it, you let me know," Morwen said. "That was very well done, Jasper." "Thank you." Jasper raised his chin and arched his back proudly. "You're welcome. But I'd still rather you didn't tell Scorn." "I won't," Morwen promised. "All right, Simrine, let's go." "What was that about?" Simrine asked as they left the kitchen. "Jasper found out how the wizards got in," Morwen said, and explained as well as she could without mentioning Jasper's friendship with the mice. "Is that what he does under the porch? Does he just make friends with the mice?" "It has to be." Simrine frowned. "Mouse holes? That's awful. We'll never find them all, and even if we did, the mice would just make new ones. And no one has ever invented a spell to keep mice out. Not one that works, anyway. And if you can't keep the mice out, you can't keep the wizards out either. It's a problem." Morwen thought for a minute. "Why don't you ask the mice to help?" "Ask the mice?" Simrine looked startled, then nodded. "Of course. Even if they won't tell us where their holes are, they can let us know if any more wizards try to use them. But who should we get to talk to them?" "Your gargoyle?" I'll wager my best broomstick that the mice will talk to him, and Telemaine can rig up some portable magic mirrors so we can warn you when you're in the other parts of the castle." "Can Telemaine make portable magic mirrors?" "I don't know," Morwen said, "but we'll ask him." They turned down the last long corridor that led to the grand hall, and Morwen's eyes widened. "Impressive," she said after a moment. Haven't you been to the grand hall before?" Simrine said. "No," Morwen said positively. "I'd remember." The door to the grand hall was made of gold. It was twice as wide and 3 times as tall as a normal door. It was covered with relief patterns that moved and twisted if you looked at them too long. Simrine smiled at Morwen, tapped at the door with one finger, and waited. After a moment, the door swung smoothly open. "We're here," Simrine said, stepping forward. "Are you ready to start?" "Oh, it's the end of the chapter!" "Oh my god, how exciting. Jasper and his friendship with mice, that's the best thing in this whole... Oh, amazing. I love it. I love it."